Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Today, me and Pastor Brian are going to talk about episode 7 of season 2 of Rings of Power. And this was a really rocking episode. We spent the whole time with the elves, and it was amazing. Brian?
Yeah, that focus in one place, I prefer that. Even though I am highly curious of a few other things going on, I almost wish it was like one episode per storyline or something. But yeah, this was great, and I loved staying in that place. I am once again, I'll say this: I'm not a boy who loves fights and action scenes, but they do them very well in this series, in my opinion. Even though too much of them were in the dark this time, and I missed a lot of the details because it was too dark. Yeah.
Yeah, we turned the lights off so we could see what's going on in those
So
scenes.
the orcs can be there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we can see some cool stuff. I mean, Elrond's Forest is the capriole. And that was pretty cool. If you want to Google it, there's lots of little videos showing horses doing that.
That was
It's pretty amazing that you can train a horse to do that. I'm assuming the horse that did it in this was actually like a CGI horse, but yeah, real horses can do that, and it's pretty cool looking. So yeah, very exciting. Lots of great battle scenes, but also lots of very great small scenes with just two people talking or whatever. So we get the gamut where we haven't completely ignored character development and people actually having conversations that mean something. So we do get Celebrimbor starting to figure out that he is sort of like a time loop, right? Because the mouse keeps doing the same thing over and over. The candles never burn down, and when he confronts Annatar and says, hey, look, this is kind of weird. And Annatar's like, well, you wanted peace and I gave it to you. And then Celebrimbor finally is like, no, Representative of the Valar would do this. This isn't good. I know who you are. You are he. He doesn't name Sauron, right? But he's like, you are he. And then Sauron's just like, I have many names, So, yeah, like
shall not be named.
I am, but I'm not. But then he goes on and he's angry, right? He's like, I want those rings. Give me those rings. Aren't they finished? So he's clearly losing some control over his temper. And, but he tries gaslighting, Celebrimbor. He's like, oh, well, Morgoth tortured me and I'm the victim basically. And can you imagine what it's like? Celebrimbor's like, well, I really can't imagine, but then you decided to torture me. And so what makes you any better? And then, again, Sauron's face is just like that anger. It's not working, right? He's not picking this up the way I want him to. Charlie Vickers has been pretty good at giving that just with his face, just showing when Sauron's like, crap, that didn't work. Why aren't they believing me? And why aren't I getting what I want? So he did that with the dwarves, and now he does this with Celebrimbor. But he still has the other elves.
Victim predators send me through the roof. I cannot stand. I can't believe that works on people, but that makes me go ballistic. Yeah.
Well, in this case, it didn't work on Celebrimbor, so that was kind of
cool. Finally.
But of course, he's set up with the other elves that Celebrimbor's gone crazy. Since Celebrimbor doesn't want help with that, when he runs out saying, "Hey, we've got to take down Annatar because there was this mouse," and then like the candles, and and they're like, "Mouse candles? What are you talking about?"
I don't know. I was like, "Is this a Carol Burnett sketch?" All of a sudden, come on, man, this is crazy.
But of course, it was Skeevy to cut off his thumb, so on that. But I guess he was strong enough to do it, so he could get out of the shackles.
Never make a ring again. I don't know.
And get those rings out of Sauron's grasp. But then we see, Sauron even working more to make him seem insane, because it looks like he throws Myrdania over the wall. But if you're watching it, honestly, I didn't see this the first time. I had to rewatch. You do see Sauron like doing a little hand gesture. And then she just sort of gets flipped over the wall, and no one is even like really touching her. So, clearly he's using Maya power.
And they showed all that gore right there in that scene, boy. They did not hold back at all.
And yeah, so her death that makes it look like Celebrimbor orchestrated that, and so it's just one more thing against him. And now his people are still following Sauron, not knowing he's Sauron. So, and he's like, you've got to finish those rings and I'll save your city, right? Well, looks like we're supposed to be saved at this point. But then we have scenes with the elves show up. Celebrimbor is standing there on the wall, and he hears horns, and he turns around, and here comes Gil-galad and Elrond and everybody from Lindon Amazingly, even though that bridge went out, and if you don't cross the bridge, it's 2 weeks to get to Eregion, from that point, as we were told earlier in this season. They somehow arrived in less than 2 weeks, and there they are, the Elfish army. And then Elrond stops it all, right? He sees that Galadriel's a prisoner, and he doesn't charge. He stops the charge. It's like, but you told her like 2 episodes ago that, you promised that if it was up between winning and her life, that you would dispense with her life and you would win, but then he doesn't. So you get this conversation though between Adar and Elrond, which was a pretty interesting conversation, because he says like, "Oh, you have the look of your foremother Melian the Maya," and it's like, well, that's kind of cool. We name drop his great grandmother, who was, another one of these angelic creatures like Sauron and Gandalf and those guys. So a little bit more of a name drop. As Sauron did it with last week or the week before, when he's like, think of all the great men in history, Barahir and Tuor and Beren. And now we get Adar saying Amelia the Maya. So we keep like doing these little callbacks to characters that were in the first age that you're probably not going to know if you haven't read, the Silmarillion. So just like little things there for the fans, I guess. So,
I probably will go read the Silmarillion now after, a couple seasons of this.
There you go. I think you would find it interesting actually, because a lot of the first part, although I think a lot of people think it's very boring, but it is when God and the angels are making Middle Earth and the universe, and when Melkor first goes astray. And so I think as someone who has a degree in theology, that you would find Tolkien's explanation for how evil gets started and where it came from, and that you might find that very interesting, especially if you were also raised Catholic.
Yeah.
So yeah, looking at it from a Catholic lens, I think you might find it very interesting. But anyway, so in this episode, then we get Adar has never heard of Harry Houdini or any other magician, because he lets Elrond kiss Galadriel, and I'm like, no, this is when the person who's in shackles is getting the little lockpick from the other person who had it in their mouth, right? That's how you get out of shackles. And Adar doesn't know that trick though, so she is able to escape and then be off killing and trying to get herself out of the orc camp later. So they go ahead and have the battle, and everything seems to be lost, right? But we're waiting for the dwarves to show up, but they don't. Because we have these couple scenes back in Khazad-dûm where Durin the Fourth gets to have a great rousing speech about, Sauron thinks we're too greedy, but there are things more important than gold, and we need to go help our friends. And will you come and fight for our friends? And everyone's like, yeah.
Yeah, so, it was a great speech. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we got a couple good speeches in this episode. That was the one that was like the rousing "let's go to war" speech. But then, of course, it turns out that Durin the Third is using the power of the ring basically to reopen the mine. So then we end up not being able to march the dwarves out of Khazad-dûm, because they got to focus on their king, who's going mad, about to release a Balrog on everybody. But yeah, so Elrond gets pretty crushed when Durin doesn't show up at dawn. He's been holding out all night trying to keep everybody out of the city, and they've even killed a troll. Arondir shows up and even helps kill the troll.
Yes.
And then gets stabbed a couple of times. So we'll have to see if his fate is determined in the next episode. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting fighting stuff, but we do get some of these great speeches too, because then Celebrimbor gives this good speech to Galadriel when he's like, remember that it's very similar to something that Sam thinks in Return of the King, when he sees up and he sees a star over Mordor, and Mordor is shrouded in darkness, so he just can see one star. It's just peeking through the clouds. And he remembers that there's this beauty that's far away and it can't be touched by evil, and that ultimately evil will fail. So, when you see, people, your enemy, like attacking your city, and you realize, well, I'm dying, or when my town dies, but someday good will prevail, right? Whatever, any human who's ever thought that to themselves, in the moment of despair, here's Celebrimbor saying, look, darkness can never overcome light. Light will always chase it away, basically. So he gives this little speech to Galadriel about, to stay with the light kind of stuff. But it was a nice little speech too.
Yeah. I tend to see Galadriel as pretty superior to most people, but I realize in her role at that moment, you know what I mean? he's
He's about to go and sacrifice himself somehow. So,
yeah, yeah.
he
I mean,
gets
he's the Lord of Eregion, so
yeah, he'll end up dead by the end of this episode, I'm sure. On Thursday.
it could just be it's an election year too. I'm not very big on hope right now.
Yeah. So,
When you say there's no place not touched by darkness, I don't know. I have a hard time with that. I mean, no place touched,
well, then we get so we've seen only elves for this whole episode. It was a pretty long episode too. I think this one on Thursday may be longer, and it's going to have to be, I think, because since we spent this week not touching any other storyline, we're still up in the air on Tom Bombadil and his wizard student. Is the student going to go off and look for a staff or rescue his friends? The dark wizard and the stores, and the Harfoots that they're harboring, what's going on with them. And now that the queen has been rejected by the sea monster, and she's now been proclaimed the queen of Numenor, what's going to happen there, and how is Pharazôn going to try to wiggle his way back into power? So we've got a lot of other things going on. I'd really like to know what's going on in those other things. I really don't particularly care what's happening to Isildur and the people in Pelargir. So that is the one storyline where I'm just not at all interested.
That feels nowhere to me. And I do feel like they'll have to at least come back to it next week, but I just can't see that resolving in any kind of a season-ending, interesting, satisfying way at all.
Yeah, I mean, they could maybe not go back there, and then maybe in season 3, the Numenorians come over to help fight Sauron, then they can land at Pelargir perhaps, and Elendil will be reunited with his son, who he thinks is dead, and we let him know that your sister thinks you're dead, so she's turned on us and working for the enemy now.
Maybe she's dead by then.
I don't know. Some people think she's going to turn into a Nazgul. So
I've read that too.
They're hoping that Pharazôn and his son and Eregion end up being 3 of the Nazgul. I guess it's well, I guess they could. Why not? But we'll have to see who gets the 9 rings. I don't know if we'll find that out if they do next season or not. We assume
if the queen was the real queen, she'd kill Pharazôn, but she's not going to because she believes he's the key to survival of Numenor. But he should be off of his head by this point.
We'll throw him in for the sea monster to eat, right?
Yeah.
You'd think the Valar don't care about him so much. Yeah. So there's a lot of storylines I want to see how they're going to progress and how they're going to leave it for the season. I don't see anybody who seems at all concerned about a season 3, even though they haven't officially greenlit it yet, or a season 4 and 5. But they said, Amazon really seemed in the beginning to be really committed to doing 5 seasons, and the viewership I think has been pretty good on this season. And so certainly it's at least got some buzz going around, and maybe not what they wanted, I don't know, but enough that
it's Amazon, a lot of money.
Amazon can look at their bottom line and say, yeah, this is what we're going to do. I mean, it's, I guess, Jeff Bezos' pet project.
Yeah, I mean, he's richer than dirt, so he could. So hopefully this is a pet project to him. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I also hope it doesn't take 18 years before the next season. I really think that hurts their viewership when they leave so much space between seasons like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 2 years, and if it's another 2 years, then another 2 years, and then another 2 years, will anybody still be watching or even remember that it was even on? You need to show something in 1 year at most, really.
Yeah.
But clearly, it's a big budget thing. I mean, it looks like a huge movie. Between the costumes and the sets and the everything looks like you just see that they're spending money. Doesn't look like a TV show.
Yeah, and even where with the horse, where we're pretty sure they're using CGI, I mean, it looks good. There's no glitch in the matrix in the CGI here, just the mouse. But no, I mean, it looks good. The scenes look good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there's doing some location filming. I did see that scene where they're on the shore where they toss people into the sea monster, that was in Spain. So so they are sending people out to do some shots that are not in the studio.
What location did they use to have the mountain with the rocks about to fall into the river?
Pretty sure that's CGI. We had distorting mountains.
Can you imagine living underneath that?
Yeah, that's gonna come down any day now. You hit it with a rock and it just falls apart. Yeah, maybe they're magical work rocks. I don't know. And now, so I assume, from last week, I still see about the same thing happening. I assume we'll kill Adar because this show doesn't need two antagonists, and Adar's story is kind of coming to a close here. He has gathered an army. He has the crown. He is attacking Sauron, and we know that Sauron's going to win, right? So that should mean the death of Adar, the recapture of the crown for Sauron.
Yeah.
So,
and I feel like that's next episode, maybe. I feel like we're there.
So we'll have to see what the stranger does. I'm assuming, as I said last week, he'll go off to find his friends. He will not look for his staff, and that will help him pass this test. That he has compassion for individuals over trying to find a stick. So we'll see.
We're ready. I mean, it is kind of cool that they did like one focused episode in the penultimate episode, because that really does leave a lot for next week.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I agree with you. It'll have to be. I felt like this episode was long, but next week will definitely have to be long.
Yeah, I don't know how long it is. I know they've released it, and I saw it at some point when they gave the running times to all 8 episodes. So it's out there. You could probably look it up. I just don't know off the top of my head anymore how long the next one is. So anyway, we'll find out in a couple of days. Any final thoughts, Brian?
No, I'm excited to watch it. I tend to wait until the weekend just so I can like give it my attention. But I immediately on Thursday I start seeing like, episode 8 like popping up all over YouTube, and I'm like, no, I haven't watched it yet. So I'm ready. I'm ready. I think this season's in a good place. I definitely really enjoyed this season, and a lot of what I've been hearing online and stuff, I think a lot of people enjoyed this season more than last season.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. I think that's true. I don't know if it's because there's less stuff with the Southerners, who are always the least interesting part of it, or I don't know, just because things are starting to look like they're coming together, which kind of helps with the changing the location and main character every 10 minutes. That they feel, except for the Southerners, they feel like it's getting to be all integrated into like the same world and the same conflict. So. Yep.
Yeah, I'm a believer in tell the story. And last season was a lot of, well, maybe, who is this? Well, I don't know, but maybe, what do they mean? Whereas I'm like, tell me the story. Just tell the story. Beginning, middle, end. Beat, beat, beat. Let's go. And that's how I felt like this episode. Beat, beat, beat. It was a lot of beats, but it kept telling the story. So I like that.
It kept going somewhere.
Yeah.
And just seeing like the progression of Sauron and Celebrimbor, and how Sauron's kind of losing his cool more and more, some things aren't going his way, was pretty cool. And I've seen a lot of people saying that, Charlie Vickers is like the highlight of the whole show. And apparently he's almost a newbie. Like he had a couple little like walk-in parts for a couple of the things. And then he was in like some 6-part series. And that's like all he's done and then until this. So he has very little like experience in front of the camera, but he's really killing it.
He has chops, yeah. Yeah, definitely. The 2-person scenes can get boring for me sometimes, but this season I don't think any of the 2-person scenes have really been that boring. So that's good. That's hard work to do. So they're doing it.
Kudos to them. All right. Well, if you have a comment, you can put it down below. Agree with us, don't agree with us, hit the like button, hit the little thumbs down button, hit the subscribe button. And we will see you next time when we get to talk about the final episode of season 8, which comes out in like 27 hours. not like I'm counting down or anything. So we'll see you then. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.